In Jurassic World, there was part of the island that was never meant to be seen. The restricted section. Now, years ago, I theorized what InGen was hiding in there. But now, well, Jurassic World Rebirth introduces a terrifying new idea. Some creations weren't just attractions, they were mistakes. And today, we're reopening the restricted section, mapping it out like it was a redacted facility tour, and ranking the most likely occupants. Now, immediately I know what you're thinking, how can Rebirth help solve what was in the restricted section? Well, that's obvious. Rebirth's opening scene where we see the D-Rex was set in 2010, and Jurassic World opened in 2005. Why were they trying to recreate a T-Rex in 2010? That's what the D-Rex was supposed to be, right? Well, they wasn't. Something far more disturbing was going on, but I'll get into that in just a second. You see, when I first covered this topic, the question was simple. Why would a theme park designed to show off dinosaurs deliberately hide part of the island? I mean, it's not accessible to guests, it's not advertised on any brochure anywhere, and it's not mapped out publicly. Back then, the best guesses were abandoned paddocks, old Jurassic Park ruins, or dangerous animals. But Rebirth reframes this completely. You see, Rebirth confirms something the franchise has only hinted at before. InGen didn't just make dinosaurs, they made iterations. Creatures that were genetically unstable, too dangerous for public viewing, too valuable to destroy, and, well, we kinda see this in the Scorpius Rex in 2006 in Camp Cretaceous Season 3. The Scorpius Rex was an iteration, it was genetically unstable and too dangerous and ugly for public viewing. Masrani himself says this and orders it destroyed, but Dr. Wu keeps it on ice in an underground facility beneath Jurassic World. And until Rebirth came out, I just thought this was just a kid's plot, but now, well, this completely changes things. And when something couldn't be displayed or sold or marketed, it was left behind. You see, anything in the restricted section isn't meant to be seen, only managed and contained. You see, why Rebirth completely changes what's in there is to do with the actual facility on Rebirth's island. This was set in 2010, the flashback is 2010. Jurassic World had been operating 5 years since then. And you could say, well, they were experimenting with hybrids because we see the Mutodon, we see the D-Rex. Well, if that was the case, why did they have a Scorpius Rex in Jurassic World in 2005/6? And if they had the Scorpius Rex there, what other things did they have in this facility on Isla Nublar? Rebirth only deepens the lore. And this is where Rebirth really changes things. Instead of clean, finished dinosaurs, this restricted zone likely housed early hybrid trials, gene-spliced prototypes, behaviorally unstable animals. Hell, the Raptor Pack was housed in the restricted section. Indominus Rex, an early hybrid, genetically spliced and completely unstable. These are ones we know of, but what are the ones we don't? Now, I'm not going to cover the dinosaurs in the other restricted section video because that's just retracing old ground. I will quickly mention a few standouts. The Deinosuchus, because we see the skeleton there on Isla Nublar, meaning that was on the island at some point. The Carnotaurus toro was obviously there, Scorpius Rex was obviously there, and some other hand-picked dinosaurs. And if you want to see them, check the other video out after this. But now we get into the meat and bones. Not monsters, but drafts. If something had survived testing but failed the temperament checks or failed some other type of test, it didn't get destroyed, it got isolated. We see that in the D-Rex. And that facility we see in Rebirth isn't the only one of its kind. That was a standalone facility. The one in Jurassic World, however, is a completely different story. We see snippets of it here and there in Camp Cretaceous, a huge underground facility, which Dr. Wu is in, where they house the Scorpius Rex. And this just makes the imagination run wild. How big is this underground facility? What else is there? In terms of map size, it takes up nearly half of the island. It's absolutely huge. And I can't wait to tell you and show you what was in there. You see, like I said, if it survived being tested on, it got isolated. And this zone likely handled aggression spikes, neurological instability, pack behavior experiments. Let's look at the restricted section here. Asset storage / long-term holding. This is the coolest part of the map. Minimal staff, minimal interaction, and the purpose here, preserve rare genetic lines, store living assets indefinitely, and maintain plausible deniability. This is where InGen hides things that they don't want to explain. And well, we're going to go over them right now, going from least to most disturbing. Let's start with what I would consider the most normal dinosaurs in this area. Obviously, we know the raptor pack was in there. That's where their paddock was kept. They also likely kept the herbivores with some type of growth disorder. We see the herbivore on screen in Dr. Wu's lab and was actually in a scene which they cut out for Jurassic World, and that was the Stegoceratops. This hybrid was cloned but wasn't featured in the movie due to the fact that the producers felt it would overshadow the Indominus Rex's storyline. This was likely in the restricted section. They're not evil, just unpredictable. These would never pass guest safety checks anyway. But there's far worse than that coming up. You see, what about the behavioral experimental dinosaurs? Dinosaurs engineered for intelligence, problem solving, or dominance testing, kinda like the Indominus Rex. And it begs the question, why would they hide these dinosaurs anyway? Well, it's obvious, because once you admit you're experimenting on living animals, you're not running a zoo, you're running a weapons lab. That brings in the Indominus Rex into the restricted section. We know this. But what about early hybrid prototypes? Before public hybrids, there were versions that didn't work. We know this. The D-Rex is seen in 2010. That's 5 years after Jurassic World had opened. This wasn't an experiment to create a T-Rex. This was something else. Masrani Global and InGen already had a T-Rex in Rexy in 2005. They also created the Scorpius sometime just after this. So the fact that they had a fully grown D-Rex in 2010, you can only imagine what they were up to on their island in Jurassic World by 2015. Sure, they had the Indominus, but they had other things on ice in their restricted section. You see, what about the dinosaurs which had physical deformities? Sensory overload, or extreme aggression? These creatures weren't failures, they were the warning signs. But just like we see time and time again, they were not destroyed, they were kept. And these are the mutation class organisms, the rebirth connection. Rebirth introduces the idea of mutations, not just hybrids, but genetic distortions. Hybrids were the planned ones. The mutations were the accidents. These aren't animals you put down easily, because you might never be able to recreate them. So they store them, they keep them. Ones created on Isla Nublar, restored in the restricted section. And every facility has its unnamed asset. Something without a proper label. The D-Rex was the one in Rebirth, but what about the one in Jurassic World? The Indominus Rex had a label. It was marketed, patented, ready to go, but there is an unnamed asset there. There must be. A creature too unstable to categorize, a prototype that survived when it shouldn't have. Something InGen legally couldn't even acknowledge existed. And if Rebirth is right, then the worst thing in the restricted section isn't what escaped. It's what was left behind. Viewing through Rebirth, the restricted section wasn't a forgotten corner of the park. Sure, at some parts on the surface had the abandoned park, that's obvious, we see it, but it also had the raptor paddock, the Indominus Rex paddock, but it had something beneath the surface, something housing prototypes, mutations, experiments too dangerous for the public and too valuable to destroy. And it's at this point where things start to go quite wild, because these are the things I believe was in the restricted section. It's pretty obvious there was an early Indominus Rex type prototype. You could say the Scorpius was there, but I believe there's others. It was failed and too unstable. Before the final Indominus Rex design, which greatly differs from the Scorpius by the way, there would have been multiple alpha builds. Versions that were too aggressive, malformed, or psychologically broken. But we're not stopping there. It's highly likely there was a mutation class Tyrannosaur in there, Rebirth style. You see, I don't believe there was just one D-Rex. If they had one on Rebirth's island, they likely had one somewhere else. A Tyrannosaur with unintended gene expression, asymmetry, extra muscle groups, or neurological damage. I mean, we see another T-Rex on Rebirth, a bigger, stronger one. It's not a hybrid, but an accident, and that's why it was hidden. But what about aquatic variants, aquatic creatures? We never see where they would have cloned the Mosasaurus. We also know a Megalodon was out in the oceans because of Rebirth. What about the aquatic facility? An aquatic hybrid prototype, a creature designed to transition between water and land, but unable to regulate respiration properly. And the obvious answer why it was kept in the restricted section? Constant medical intervention would be required. Completely unethical, and it would have been tested for future aquatic assets. There would likely also be an avian raptor mutation. down to structural failure. Look at the Mutodon we see on Rebirth's Island. Something similar to this. The status would be that it was partial flight / a full nightmare. A winged raptor-style creature with malformed bone density or muscular imbalance. Like the Mutodon, but different in design. I mean, if InGen were there to test the military applications of these creatures, are you telling me they wouldn't want an Indominus Rex or an Endoraptor, exactly the same as an Endoraptor, but even better? It can fly, it can reach places a ground animal could only dream of. And this last one right here is probably my favourite of them all, and likely the one which they would keep as the unnamed assets, the redacted in the file, and the status classified. A creature without a proper species label, the result of overlapping experiments or corrupted genome assembly. Now it's obvious why this would be hidden in the restricted section. It cannot be categorized, cannot be ethically explained, cannot be replicated. And that's because it's completely wrong. They've mixed human DNA into the equation. Human DNA with dinosaur DNA. This was likely the prototype to the Indominus. The Indominus had other types of DNA, something which gave it that intelligence boost. Every secret facility has one thing that made it into the database, one thing which is their top secret. This animal, this unnamed asset, would be it. Someone would have experimented with human DNA. It's inevitable, it's going to happen, and it happened at this facility. But after Jurassic World fell in 2015, it was abandoned, left in this underground facility to its fate. History shows us that InGen and Maserati Global have a habit of abandoning things on islands. The Spinosaurus, Jurassic Park 3. Abandoned Jurassic World in 2015. Abandoned Isla Nublar initially in 1993. They abandoned the facility in Rebirth. They would have no problem abandoning these creatures, these mutants, deformities, whatever you want to call them. Now, this isn't to say that this theory outshines my other one. My old theory, what was really in the restricted section in Jurassic World, still holds up surprisingly well. But Rebirth adds information we simply didn't have back then. Sure, we could have speculated about certain mutants, hybrids, human DNA potentially, but Rebirth points us in the direction and gives us new information. And if you want to see where the theory started before Rebirth changed everything, I've linked my original restricted section breakdown on the screen for you right now. Watch that, and then come back and tell me if this theory still holds up. So if you could open one sealed door in the restricted section, what do you think was behind it? Failed hybrid, hyper-intelligent raptor, something worse? And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hype, and subscribe for plenty more Jurassic content coming up. I release a video like this every single week, and if you're not subscribed, you will miss it. And if you want to see them early, consider becoming a member. Massive thanks to the InGen team who are on screen now. DVM Wannabe 1018, Fallen Zoria, and our Jurassic CEOs Joseph Frost, Ghost, and Zarkadian. Thanks for keeping the power on in the park. And if you came across a mutant raptor out in the open, could your day get any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.